No, not really. I was what intrigued me to be in the movie was many things. It was a good script and it was an interesting story. But as for myself, it was a new character for me. You know, as you might know, I'm generally called to play the bad guy or the psychopath or so it's a kind of Humphrey Bogart role. I mean
Yes.
the good but rough cop, and so it was interesting for me. It was something new. You know, an actor always wants to do something new, and it's much more exciting. So I stick to the script. No, my thoughts about him was he was probably a very lonely man. I think he's might be divorced or a widower or
Yes.
But I really like the little Cindy phone call with his daughter
Isabel.
Showing a human side of him and the way the fact that he has some affections in life, and so no, all in all, it was very interesting for me, an interesting role to play. And I think it also gives a more insight explanation to his personal attachment to this case, because I think he feels like having a father-daughter relationship with Melissa.
Yes.
And so he's very moved when he sees the picture of the little baby. Probably he wants to be a granddad himself one day, and so it's the fact that he has a daughter creates a stronger chain to the main story. I'm very glad I finally saw it here in Rome at the Fanta Festival, and I was very curious about it, and I liked it a lot. Well, the story was interesting, but that I already knew from the script. But you know that the other things can make a big difference.
Oh yes.
The story is not enough, and so I was glad, because you are. Apart from being a brilliant director, you're a very good actor. And so are the others. I was struck by how good all the others were, so much in character, so right for the character, and well, apart from Doug Bradley and I mean the well-known professionals who were in it, but the young people or local people, or I think they were amazingly good, and so I was very glad about it. It was all very, very well done, well played, the good photography. But that I noticed on set, because I made so many movies that I can see on set if the director or photography is good, and she's surely very talented.
Oh yes.
And so yes, a good movie. No,
You know, young.
I think it's very refreshing and interesting to work with young people. It's something I try to do whenever I can. I did with you, I did with the English director Board, and I plan to do it with as many other as I can think of, if the script is interesting, and because I think, you know, at my age, with my career, it's something you have to do. It's you have to give a possibility to young people. They are the future. So if you had done a little something in your career, it's good to put that little something on the behalf of their future career. And as for the big directors I worked with, you have to consider that many of them weren't really working with actors. So the fact that, whilst I noticed that young directors work more with the actors, and at times, like in your case, being actors themselves. So no, I was perfectly comfortable. Being more interested about the story, the plot, the characters, the psychology, instead of having a sort of sadistic pleasure in the gore in itself, which is something I never got to like. I mean, if it's if it's useful for the story, for the rhythm, to see blood and to see. I mean, a dead person or a corpse or even a rat eating a corpse it's okay, but in horrors, you know, many times you have the impression it's just for the sheer pleasure of the image in itself, and I don't share this pleasure. So a thriller is something that is more, first of all, more connected to reality. And I think the Infliction is deeply connected to reality. I mean, these things happen. You read about that on the newspapers. You watch that on TV news, and so it's real life, which, in my opinion, is much more interesting. And so yes, you follow the story. You want to know how it ends. It's not as graphic and self-indulging, I would say, as horror generally are. And what I like about Infliction is also the fact that somehow it's impartial, in the sense that, of course, he is committing terrible crimes. Of course, you hope that the girl will survive, but the movie doesn't take part. I mean, it's not for someone and against versus someone else, and so even the character of the rapist and the killer is portrayed as real. I mean, you can even feel empathy for him at some point, in the sense that you can understand his reasons, his past and his traumas, and so that's much more interesting than you know, I'm the good one and he's the bad one. I think at that point he's really furious and despising this person, because as much as he hates David O'Hara, he can have some understanding for him or consider him as a person, whilst this Jamey Miller is really, you know, the shit of humanity. Some crazy psychopath that just wanting to have notoriety and notoriety, and so that's, it's really the worst shit ever. So yes, he has pleasure in defeating him. I have a taste, I would say, for rhymes and games with words, and I love poetry. I like to translate poetry. I translated a lot of English poetry.
You're a writer too.
Into Italian. I wrote songs, and so it immediately catch my mind as the fact that Jamey Miller and Copycat Killer were rhyming.
Yes.
So that gave me the idea of making this little nursery rhyme. So Jamey Miller, the Copycat Killer, you know, it's Little Miss Muffet sat on a carpet. You know, it's that kind of thing. I hope to be in more films and also to share more experiences with my fans. As for the Infliction, I would say even if David O'Hara is good looking, even if he's a good guy, if he's an interesting actor, all this, remember he's the bad guy.
Yes.
So don't imitate.
And the sequel maybe...
Otherwise I'll catch you as a copycat killer.
Yes, yes. All right, Johnny, that concludes our interview. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Enjoy it.